Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing our program on quitting porn for good, and we're going to be picking up where we left off in the last lesson. In the last lesson, we talked about how to overcome the core obstacle to getting clean, which are the three types of porn cravings: sexual cravings, chemical cravings, and emotional cravings. And while most guys try to spend their time fighting these first two types of cravings, really, it's the emotional cravings which are the biggest deal. These are where most guys get the most stuck and they have the most trouble. Because what I've learned after years of helping guys get clean from porn, I found that the main reasons guys relapse, it's not because of the chemical withdrawal, and it's not because they can't control their sexuality. It's because they're using porn to cope with the pain of their unmet emotional desires. When life feels stressful, boring, lonely, or meaningless, porn becomes an escape valve that offers instant relief. But the more you rely on it, the more you end up neglecting your deeper wants. And porn is always there to take the edge off. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to begin fixing these emotional deficits by breaking down your brain's natural appetites and rebalancing them to make staying clean not just possible, but natural, sustainable, and genuinely fulfilling. Every man has three fundamental appetites inside of him. First is the appetite for progress, the desire to move forward, to achieve, to win, all right? And this is tied to serotonin. And you feel this when you're making real progress towards your goals. Like the way I see it, men are built to be the workhorses of humanity. And when you don't do good work, you'll inevitably end up feeling lacking. All right. The second appetite is the appetite for pleasure, the desire to feel good right now. And this is tied to dopamine. Technically, dopamine is tied to a lot of different things that we do, but we are talking about it particularly in the context of pleasure for pleasure's sake. While you're meant to work towards your goals, you'll also want to enjoy the journey along the way, not just perpetually delay gratification for forever. And that brings us to the third appetite of purpose. And purpose is the desire for your actions to mean something to you. And I believe that meaning is inherently tied to oxytocin, which is like the connection neurochemical. And you feel this when your work or your pleasure connects you with God, yourself, or other people. These connections are where we derive our sense of meaning and fulfillment. When these three drives are fed and balanced, you feel alive, powerful, and fulfilled. And when they're not, your brain will start hurting and wanting shortcuts, wanting release, and porn is the easiest way to get that. So now let's look at what happens when each of these appetites gets out of whack. All right. And so we'll start by looking at what happens when there is a progress imbalance. This is the modality of the obsessive achiever. And when you're in this mindset, you're always stressing about being more productive and chasing the next goal. You put all of your intentional energy into how to become richer, fitter, more productive, more successful, more attractive, or sometimes even just more holy. It's just about, how can you sacrifice current pleasure for future gain? However, no one can be in work mode 24/7, and eventually everyone's gas tank for productivity runs dry, and that's okay. You are not a machine. But the problem is that if you've put no intentionality into how you're going to rest, recover, and have fun, then you'll just default to whatever you've practiced previously to unwind once your control slips. And for many guys, this is exactly when they reach for porn, scrolling, substances, or junk food, or whatever else they use to numb out. They're just depleted because they're working so hard. Part of their brain wants pleasure, and since they haven't planned for it, they turn to porn. To make matters worse, when guys get caught in the obsessive achiever trap, they will just respond to this pattern by trying to lock in even harder and become even more disciplined. They tell themselves that they will relax once they reach those faraway goals. But there's always another goal. There's always another place where they aren't good enough, and they find themselves falling over and over again to porn. But there are also guys who are on the total opposite end of the equation. And this is the pleasure addict, all right? And this is where, there is an imbalance in their pursuit of pleasure. He's constantly chasing dopamine hits through porn, social media, games, junk food, and his thoughts are consumed by low-value stimulation and distraction. The problem is that his lack of intentionality around his work just creates more stress, pressure, and problems. Deadlines and appointments get missed, projects go undone, years pass, and life not only fails to progress, it moves backwards. Porn offers sweet relief from the stress and dissatisfaction of that inaction. And what's worse is that the more that the pleasure addict indulges, the less satisfying it all becomes. His focus drops, his motivation dies, and he starts to resent himself for wasting his life. And then finally, there's the drifter archetype, who is really operating in a purpose deficit. He might be working hard or relaxing often, but nothing feels meaningful. His life lacks directions, his goals don't inspire him, and even his pleasures feel hollow. Without that sense of connection to God, to others, to his own deeper self, everything starts to feel empty. And obviously, porn can take that feeling of emptiness away by tricking your mind into thinking that, at least for a moment, something of significance is happening. And while some guys may deal with just one of these issues, it's very common to struggle with multiple of them. So, for example, it's very common for guys to swing like a pendulum between the pleasure addict and obsessive achiever. They will grind till they burn out, then they go into hedonistic pleasure addict mode for a while until they're repulsed by themselves, at which point they go back to grinding and the cycle repeats. And of course, all the while they're using porn to cope. And as for that drifting or lack of purpose and connection, that can creep up on anyone, and it acts as a multiplier to every drive to escape with porn. So here's what we need to understand. Porn is a poison masquerading as an antidote to your natural appetites of progress, pleasure, and purpose. And this is because it gives you a fake version of all three appetites at once. You got fake productivity, which is like the virtual chase, virtual conquest, and virtual status, all right, of using porn and simulating sexual conquest, essentially, all right? Then you've got fake pleasure, right? Like, yeah, you might say, oh, well, the pleasure of porn is real, but ultimately it's a net pain. You get way more pain out of it. So can you really call it pleasure? And then you've got fake purpose, right? Because you've got this illusion of intimacy and connection that porn simulates. This dynamic is why quitting porn isn't just about willpower. It's about rebalancing your internal system so your real life gives you what porn fakes. So what's the path forward here? Well, to quit porn as sustainably and effectively as possible, we need to be properly feeding each of these appetites in a dignified manner. Now, I want to be crystal clear about this. You do not need to be perfect at feeding all of your appetites at 100%, okay? Not every appetite needs to be 100% satisfied at all times, right? That's a fool's errand. It's impossible. It's not realistic, okay? All you got to do is ensure that there's no glaring issues or holes in the treatment of these appetites that are triggering you to reach porn. So instead of about making sure that they're all at 100, it's about making sure that none of them are just like at a 0, okay? There's no part of you that's screaming out saying, hey, I'm unsatisfied here, and you're not doing anything about it. So what this means is that we need to create a balanced and sustainable lifestyle shift where you're addressing these appetites for progress, pleasure, and purpose in a reasonable and consistent way, all right? We don't need to be amazing. We just need to do good enough, okay? And the problem is this can't all be done at once, at least for a lot of guys. Some guys, they only have small tweaks to make, and maybe they can, but for a lot of guys, there's going to be a journey that you need to go on. And this journey is the rite of passage into true holistic masculinity and dignified discipline. Now, if we want to avoid this just being an empty, nice sounding sentiment, then you need to actually analyze your current relationship to your appetites. And to do this, I want you to view this video on markqueppet.com and do the exercises for this lesson, which will expose your current patterns and gaps in your relation to your three appetites. This will give you invaluable insight for how to apply all the tools and strategies moving forward, where we'll start building out these lifestyle shifts step by step to create sustainable productivity, rediscover guilt-free pleasure, and reconnect with your deeper purpose, and of course, quit porn. Because quitting porn isn't about deprivation. It's about filling yourself up in a better way. And when we can work with our core desires rather than just trying to squash them, you won't have to fight yourself anymore, and quitting porn will become natural. So that's what I have for you here. See you in the next lesson. Ooyah.